Good morning. How's everybody doing? You guys look so energized. Welcome to the 2013 Nagios World Conference. It's awesome that you guys are here. This is it's great for us to be here every year, and I just appreciate that you guys are all here. But right now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you guys the founder and owner of Nagios, Ethan Galstad.
Thank you, Paul. Are you able to hear me okay? Is this okay? All right. Well, as Paul mentioned, certainly welcome to this conference. I'd like to thank you all on behalf of the entire Nagios team for coming to our third conference. We've been holding this for 2 years, and we've always had a great time. It's great to meet people from the community, from many of our customers come here, and we always have a great time sharing stories, learning from other people as to what they're doing, how they're leveraging Nagios. We always learn something new. Last night, I just learned that somebody used Nagios to monitor the waves because they were a surfer, and they'd get a notification when it was a good time to go surfing. So I'm always, always amazed when people tell me about how they're using Nagios in different ways. There are many people here from not only different geographic regions, different areas, different countries, but a wide range of experience levels as well. On the one hand, you have very advanced Nagios administrators who have been using it since the days when it was called NetSaint, and that's going back almost 15 years now, so a very long time. And on the other hand, you have people who are at the conference who have not used Nagios but are interested in learning more about it, and so we certainly welcome everybody. I think we have something, some presentations that will fit everybody's, I guess, experience level in Nagios. Each of the presentations, the descriptions, you'll see that they have whether they're a tag that says, whether they're for beginners or medium or advanced individuals. So certainly take a look at those when you're making a decision as to what presentation you want to attend. Obviously, other than this keynote, we split up into 3 different presentations throughout the rest of the conference. You can only be in one location at a given time, so you're not going to be able to see all the presentations in person. But we are recording each of these sessions, so we will make the videos available to all of you and send you an email after the conference is over and after we get the videos produced. So if you don't have time to see something, don't worry about it. We'll make those videos available to you afterwards. To get started, there are a bunch of things to talk about, some new things that have happened in a variety of different Nagios solutions out there. So what I'm going to do is start out and give people an overview of the different types of Nagios solutions that are out there, because there's more than one. And then give you a little update as to what's new and what's coming in the future with some of those products. There's a lot that's happening here. More detailed information on any individual topic that I talk about will be discussed in more detail in the other presentations. So if you're interested in learning about Nagios Core, Nagios XI, Nagios Fusion, whatever your interest area is, you'll be able to learn more about that in a different presentation. But to get started, this is actually the first presentation I've given that's a 1.2 gigabyte Keynote file, or presentation file, so we're going to see if it actually works. Essentially what Nagios is it is a variety of solutions that help with IT management and IT monitoring. What that is, if you're not familiar with it, everybody is familiar with computers, cell phones, PDAs, internet connections, and we've all experienced troubles or problems when things break. When your internet connection drops, things go wrong. So we're all familiar with that. Now, if you're a system or network administrator, or you're an IT manager, you have tens or hundreds or even thousands of devices on your network, servers, workstations, infrastructure elements like routers and switches. So the magnitude of problems that you might have to deal with increases dramatically. And that's where some of our solutions come into place. The most well-known solution for Nagios is called Nagios Core. It was for a long time what Nagios was only known for, and it was renamed Nagios Core a couple years back. But it's a free open source solution. It provides basic monitoring capabilities of your infrastructure, your workstations, websites, printers, whatever you might have, and it lets you know when there's a problem. And that's important because companies, organizations don't want downtime. They don't want their websites to be down. They don't want to lose business. And it provides a basic reporting and availability reports that you might need to actually see how well is your infrastructure performing. Core is designed to operate as a lean, mean machine. It is built for performance so that you can monitor a lot of things in your environment. When Nagios was first developed, its target network size was probably a dozen or 2 dozen machines that somebody might want to monitor. People are leveraging Nagios Core to monitor networks that are tens of thousands, of nodes in size, or even larger in some cases. Recently, just last week, we had a release of Nagios Core 4.0. Nagios Core 4 represents a pretty huge jump in performance. There were a lot of things that were done underneath the hood to improve the way it operates, the way it processes configuration files, the way the internal queuing system and scheduling system works. One of the biggest performance improvements comes from what are called worker processes, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. In addition, we have a couple of APIs that we've added, and there's some new ones that have not been added to the core release yet, but will be shortly, and you'll be hearing about that in some of the other talks as well. So workers are the biggest performance increase in Nagios Core 4, and the best way to explain them is to first explain the way Nagios Core used to work before the 4.0 release. When Nagios Core needed to go out and monitor, needed to check the status of a website or a server, what it would do is it would actually run that check, perform that check itself. And for the technical people out there, the way it would do that, it would actually replicate itself in memory using essentially the fork process. And that was that worked very well. It was very effective in how it performed checks, but it was highly intensive in terms of memory usage and CPU overhead. So what has changed in Nagios Core 4 is the introduction of worker processes. And the way these work is they're essentially a middle layer between Nagios Core and the actual plugins that are actually executed to monitor websites, servers, printers, whatever you might have. And so Nagios Core itself doesn't need to fork or replicate itself in memory in order to perform the check. What it'll do is just pass the request off to the worker process, which will then in turn monitor, check the status of a website, a switch, router, and return that information to the core monitoring engine. So it's essentially just a middle layer between the plugins that are being executed and the main scheduling engine. We've had some customers report really big performance improvements from using the Core 4 engine. In some cases, 700% improvement or more has been seen. So it's a pretty significant change to Nagios Core that will allow it to scale. Moving on from Core, we've got another solution that we actually built on top of Core, and that product is called Nagios XI. Essentially, it's the commercial edition of our monitoring product that's built on top of the Core monitoring engine. So what we've done with XI is we've added additional features that a lot of users wanted and that weren't easy to accomplish in Nagios Core. So there's a better interface, there are dashboards, there's better reporting, better visualization, and we really focused on making the configuration easy to use. We have a couple different options for configuring what's being monitored in Nagios XI. We've got auto discovery scripts, we have configuration wizards, and an advanced web configuration front end as well. We still let people modify the old Core config files manually if they want, but XI is designed to make things easier. In the more recent releases of Nagios XI, we have a number of things in there, but some of the things that we focused on were the introduction of capacity planning, which allows you to not only see what's going on right now and determine like how much bandwidth you're using or how much disk usage you're using, what the processor load is, but it allows you to plan and see where things are probably going to be 3, 6, 12 months in the future. And that's really important when you're in charge of planning upgrades on your network or having to budget the money to actually purchase the equipment. That's pretty important. We also added business process monitoring. What that is, it's a higher level abstraction of monitoring, something that's important to the business. Chances are your organization, your company did not go into business to make sure that servers are working, that your network is up, that your CPU load is low, that your database server is running. They went into business. Their goal is to provide a product or a solution to their customers. You might have an online e-commerce site, where you're selling a product or a service. The working of how well that e-commerce system works as a whole, that's a business process. That's something that's important to the entire company. If that stops working or is degraded in some manner, that really affects the bottom line. And so a business process is essentially a higher level idea of something that you want to monitor, that you want to make sure is working well. And it's comprised of individual elements that you might be monitoring in your infrastructure. For example, an e-commerce business process might include DNS servers, database servers, order fulfillment services. A number of different things have to work in unison in order to actually provide a product or deliver a service to an end customer. So that's one of the things we added in recent releases of XI, and just some tools to make managing larger configurations easier with various bulk management tools. XI 14 is going to be coming out in 2014 or slightly before. We're going to aim for January for a release. We will be including the Nagios Core 4 engine underneath the hood to give it even more capabilities and better scalability. And we're going to be adding what we're referring to as automatic commissioning and decommissioning. And what that is just the ability for you to tell Nagios XI that, hey, when something new appears on the network, somebody configures or deploys a new workstation or a new service comes up, is turned on one of your web servers, automatically add that to the monitoring configuration, and by default monitor a certain set of people when that comes online. Very useful for virtual environments, especially when you're spinning up VMs. And you don't necessarily want to go back into XI or your monitoring system and add that manually. You already know that you added it to your network, so you'll have the ability to automatically have XI pick that up and start monitoring it with some default values. Likewise, when something is decommissioned or it breaks or is taken offline, XI will be able to automatically remove that from your monitoring configuration, so you don't need to worry about it. There's not something that's marked as being a persistent problem in the interface. You aren't getting alerts for a problem that really doesn't exist anymore because that thing went away. We're also going to make our wizards smarter. Those of you who are familiar with Nagios XI know that we have wizards that basically allow regular people, non-superhuman technical people, to monitor something that they care about. So we have wizards for monitoring websites, Windows machines, a whole bunch of things that prompt people, that ask them very plain English questions like, what's the address, what's the URL of the website you want to monitor? And with very few questions, they're able to click a few buttons and monitor that device or that service for themselves, which is really useful. If you're a core admin, in many cases, unless you have some other kind of solution for allowing end users to modify your configuration, they need to always come to you when something gets added. When they want something to be monitored, you have to be the one to actually implement that. Unless you have some kind of other system that allows end users to do it for themselves. And that's one of the things that we've added to Nagios XI is the ability for end users to do it for themselves. I mean, the development team or the network admins, the sysadmins, they care about different things than what you might. And all you want to do as a Nagios administrator is just set up the system and give them access to it. So it's really nice, the capabilities to allow end users to just do things themselves. In XI 2014, we're going to make the wizards smarter so they can make some more decisions when you say, okay, I want to monitor this website or this Windows machine or this network switch. The wizards will have more intelligence in them and query information about that service, about that device, and try to make a smart decision about the things that you are most likely to actually care about, that you want to monitor, without having to walk an OID tree if you're monitoring an SNMP device, or start monitoring all the services on a Windows box when you only care about one or two of them. So the wizards are going to get smarter. We're also going to be employing some really cool agent deployment software. So for those of you that use Nagios Core and Nagios XI, you know that in order to monitor a Windows box, a Linux, Unix box, in order to get metrics on how much disk usage is being used, how much processor load is being used, is a service running, you need to install an agent, which for those of you who are not aware is just a piece of software that you have to install on that machine. And deploying agents, it's kind of a pain. You either need to physically be at the box to install the agent, maybe you can get remote access to it, or you might deploy use some deployment software, which can be difficult and cumbersome. We've developed some really cool technology that is getting very close to being ready for prime time, and we're actually going to release it before XI 2014 for the people that are using XI currently. And that's a technology we call npush. Right now it works with Windows boxes because that was the hardest thing to get this thing working on. Doing Linux, Unix support is pretty easy. The way this works is it basically allows you to, from your Nagios server, from a web interface, is to give the address of a machine that you want to install an agent on and the credentials that should be used to log into that box. And it will push out the agent, install it silently, configure it, and start it up automatically without you having to remote into that box, download the agent, configure it. You can do that through a single web interface and automatically have that deployed. In addition to agents, you can do more than agents. You can do, a lot of people use NS Client++ or NRPE or NRDS for an agent that they might want to deploy with this. But you can actually install any software that you want. So you could install a new version of Office, for example, on your Windows machines in the network using the npush technology. It's pretty cool. And you can uninstall stuff too. And npush has the capabilities of being able to query the machine that you want something to be installed on and make a determination as to what architecture is it. Is it 32-bit, 64-bit? Is it Intel? Is it SPARC? Is it something else? And what operating system, what version of the operating system is running? So you can write as an admin, or we can write it in the case of agents that we support out of the box, essentially a recipe that describes what should be deployed, how it should be deployed for different operating systems. So it's really, really nice. The end user feel of this is pretty cool, and you'll see some demos of this in at least one presentation. I think the Windows monitoring talk that happens, I believe Thursday, will cover this. So it's some really cool technology. Like I said, this we're planning on making available in November to current Nagios XI users, and it will be deployed right along XI 2014 as well. I talked about Core and XI. These are really our two main infrastructure monitoring solutions. They basically make sure that things are working properly. If you've got multiple monitoring servers, a lot of big environments make use of multiple servers. Maybe they have an office in San Francisco, one in Chicago, something overseas, or just a really big environment. People often deploy multiple servers, either multiple Core servers, multiple XI servers, or a mix of both. And the challenge with that is trying, if you have 10 monitoring servers, you don't want to have to log into 10 different interfaces to see what's going on. So what we've done is we built a product called Nagios Fusion that basically allows you to centralize the view of all your monitoring servers that you have in your network into a central dashboard. And so in one location, you can see what's happening on your network and see some reports. And if you are using Nagios XI for your monitoring server, you can see you're automatically authenticated. You sign in once to Nagios Fusion, and you're automatically authenticated to your XI monitoring servers. So if you want to dig in and go into greater detail on those XI servers, you don't need to re-authenticate. So it's a pretty cool solution. So as I mentioned, Core and XI are solutions that allow you to monitor, are things on your network working properly? Are the websites or the web servers, are the printers, switches, whatever, are they working properly? And both Core and XI focus on basically monitoring those devices, those applications, to ensure that they're within a certain threshold, within the parameters that you specify. Are they working properly? But they don't really go into detail and cover what's actually happening on your network in terms of the network traffic that's flowing over it. A lot of questions, a lot of times we have, like in our office at Nagios, we have, sometimes we're like, why is the network so slow? And you can monitor the bandwidth and say, yeah, a lot of bandwidth is being used, but by what? And that's a really big question. So we developed actually a new product called Nagios Network Analyzer that focuses on that area. And what it does is it essentially utilizes sources or probes throughout your network to send summary information about what's happening on your network to Network Analyzer. And for those of you who are familiar, it basically uses NetFlow technology and its variants. There are probably half a dozen or more variants of NetFlow, and most, if not all of those, are supported. It can not only monitor bandwidth, but total bandwidth that's being used, but it can monitor how much bandwidth is being used by certain protocols. So it can say, it can tell you 20% of bandwidth is being utilized by web traffic, or SNMP, or SSH traffic, and that's really useful. It also allows you to find out which machines are sending the data to where, what IP addresses are talking to each other, and so it gives you the source and destination ports for the admins out there to allow you to see kind of what's going on in the network. It has the ability to detect when something's not normal. So in Network Analyzer, you can set up the ability for it to determine what's normal for you in terms of traffic usage. And then when something is abnormal, like you see a spike in P2P traffic or web traffic or email traffic, you can get an alert for that to know. And that allows you to know, if something happened, is somebody shipping all your company secrets off-site, or does somebody get hacked, something like that. We actually, as we were developing this internally, the product was just starting to come together. It was in the really early stages of this. We started collecting data internally on our network, and we saw traffic on a common TCP port that a well-known virus or Trojan uses, and we were pretty alarmed. We were like, whose machine is this installed on? And using Network Analyzer, we were able to determine the IP address of the machine, and then go talk to the user and say, it looks like you've been hacked or something's going on. It turned out that individual just installed Dropbox for file synchronization, and it wasn't, a virus or a Trojan, but I think it alarmed them too, because they were a pretty new employee at the company, only had been there a week, and so we were like, what's going on in your machine? But it was a really good use case for how you would actually use something like this, where you can detect, hey, there's a problem on the network. So this goes into deeper detail. It doesn't show you like, hey, you're utilizing 80% of your bandwidth. It can actually tell you what percentage, what breakdowns you have. And that allows you to, if you are using quality of service rules, to actually say, okay, we see what the traffic is like in the network in terms of who's using how much web or SSH email traffic. And you can use that information and use that to essentially define quality of service rules to ensure, for example, that voice over IP services get a certain allotment. And you can know using this tool that that's going to be okay. You can see that in a graphical interface and make that determination very easily. So it's a pretty neat product. We just released this about 2 weeks ago. Early betas had been out a while earlier, but we redid the interface and added some more capabilities. So it's a brand new product that's out. We have some very good feedback for it so far, so it's pretty cool. And I mentioned agents before. For those of you who use Nagios or have used it, you know that there are a couple agents out there. Too many agents, actually. Each of those agents has their benefits and their downsides. Some work well with passive checks or active checks. Some offer remote configuration, but they don't do certain other features. And so we decided we'd solve the problem of too many agents by creating yet another agent, because we've only internally created like 3 agents in the past 12 months, so we thought we'd add another one to the mix. And that agent is called the NCPA, or Nagios Cross-Platform Agent. So one of the problems with agents right now is they're usually platform independent. You often need a different agent on your Windows boxes than you do on your Linux or Unix boxes. And even if you install the agent, it may not support passive checks, or it may not support active checks, or you might not be able to change what it's capable of monitoring. You can't customize it. And in most cases, you can't, if you want to monitor, you change what that agent is monitoring, or how it's operating. You need to, walk over to the machine, or do a remote access to that machine to change its configuration and restart the service. So with NCPA, we've overcome some of those limitations, and it works on both. We have builds for both Windows and Linux. It's Python based. It allows you to use it outside of your local network with passive checks. It also works with active checks, and it features central management of its configuration. Last year, we talked about NRDS, which is a different type of agent that allows you to centrally manage things. And NCPA is built on the NRDS technology that we used in that agent. So it makes use of that. So from one central location, once you get the agent installed, you can change its configuration, what it's monitoring right from your Nagios server. And if you use a Nagios XI, it's right through the interface. So it's very easy to change how it's operating. And it's a little bit different than other agents in that you don't actually need Nagios XI or Nagios Core to use it. You could use it with some other software. It actually has a local interface. It runs its own web server internally. So you can go and see, okay, what do things currently look like on this box or on the local machine without having to actually implement a full-blown monitoring system. So pretty cool. This is just released Friday. So as somebody in our company said, this is smoking code. There are bugs probably in it. There's very little documentation right now. We're up against the wall with a lot of different things happening right before this conference. So give it a try if you're interested. In our testing, it's worked very well. It's brand new. So, and there's a talk about this later at the conference too, if you're interested in how this works. So Core and XI, I'm going to back up a little bit. Core and XI monitor your network, your systems, and can tell you when a problem occurs, when something goes wrong. And that's good. I mean, you can get an email, you can get an SMS alert, a page, whatever, when something goes wrong. And that allows you to fix it, and that's very critical, that aspect of monitoring. But also, other than detecting the problem, the reaction as to what happens is also very important. We have two solutions I'd like to talk about for that. The first one that we built was just a lightweight, it's kind of a ticketing system if you're familiar with help desk or ticketing systems. It's called Nagios Incident Manager. What it allows you to do is interface it with Nagios XI and Nagios Core so that when they detect a problem, it will automatically open a trouble ticket in Incident Manager. It's actually called an issue or an incident in Incident Manager. It's pretty lightweight. It was designed to meet the needs of a lot of companies that were contacting us and saying, we need some kind of easy integration for like a help desk or ticketing type situation in order to, fix or solve problems when things come up on the network. So Incident Manager is designed to not only allow you to create issues or incidents, but then also collaborate with other individuals in your organization, share files, share documents, share information about the cause of an issue, how it's being resolved. So a good use case for this, for example, is if your backbone link to the internet gets severed because they're doing some construction down the street and the backhoe cut a fiber link. An issue might be, hey, our internet connection doesn't work. But the issue or the information that might be shared in here across team members might be things like, hey, I've contacted Quest or the telephone company, notified them of the outage. I've talked to the power company, and here's what they're saying for an ETA. And here's a detailed diagnosis of the problem. So it allows you to share that information very easily in one interface. So that's one solution we've got. We're also working on another one. I talked briefly about this last year at the conference for those of you who were here, that we're starting to work on a new product called Nagios Reactor, and we were hoping to have it out before this year's conference. With too many other new things happening, though, we just didn't have time to do it. So our plan is to get it out either by the end of this year or the early part of next. Nagios Reactor, basically, if you're an experienced Nagios admin, you can think of it as a graphical way to define and execute event handlers. So basically, event chains in Nagios Reactor are basically logic trees or logic blocks that allow you to define, okay, when something happens or given a certain set of data, what steps, what things should be taken. So if you are experienced in Nagios Core and Nagios XI, you know that you can make use of what are called event handlers to have Core or XI do something when it detects a problem. So you could, for example, restart a service that Core or XI had detected that had failed. And you can do that stuff in Reactor through a nice user interface that's intuitive. But you can also do some higher level automation and workflow stuff, and I'll talk about some examples for that. It's not limited to just IT monitoring. Reactor is being designed as a generic workflow and automation solution where you can define rules that maybe you don't use in the IT department, but maybe the payroll department uses, or somebody in sales or an order fulfillment uses to perform certain steps. Essentially, Reactor, the goal of this was to make it be as powerful as scripting without the mess of scripts. And for those of you who are technical, scripting is no problem. You probably have multiple shell scripts, Python scripts, scripts of all in different languages, and they work fine. You know how to use them, and that's awesome. Try showing your script to somebody in sales or marketing and saying, hey, we know you want to schedule something on a regular basis. Here's the script I wrote. You can go ahead and use this, modify it a little bit for your needs. They're going to look at you like you're nuts, right? So Reactor is designed to make things a lot easier. As a good litmus test for this, we actually had somebody in our marketing department who would not be able to write any kind of scripting language. Set up an event chain of Reactor to send out an email reminder at a certain time of the week to remind people, hey, there's a team meeting coming up. And they did that right through the web interface. It's very easy to use. So it's a solution that allows not only IT professionals to use it, but regular people who are not super human when it comes to technology. We also built it so you can leverage your existing stuff that you've got. It can still use and execute Bash, Python, Perl scripts, either locally on the Reactor box or call them remotely through SSH or some other method. So you can leverage all the pieces that you have currently in place in your infrastructure, very easily, and that gives it a lot of power. We built in some nice things to make it very easy to do basic things like send an email, hit a website, get some data back from that website, touch a file, create a file, things like that. But the ability to interface with what you've already got in your network is pretty huge. It makes it very powerful. And if something isn't supported natively in Reactor, you can very quickly add some snippets of shell code, PHP, Perl, whatever you want to execute to make it do something new. We've also added the ability to define and share rules, which are basically logic blocks within an event handler or a workflow chain. And that allows you as an admin to create a set of logic that you'd like to share with other people in the organization. You can save that for them, and then they can make use of that in their own event chains. So some pretty cool stuff. Some examples of what you can do with this. And we really like to be able to have had a beta before, but we'll certainly let you know as soon as we have something that you can test out. But some ways that you can do this is obviously in the classic event handler case or usage case from Core and XI, and that you might want to restart failed services automatically. And Reactor will be able to do that. It will be able to have an option right in a web interface, restart service XYZ on this Windows box very easily. You can do things like that are bigger than or different than just event handling type things. One example that was suggested by one of our tech guys is that we could probably watch our fail to ban logs to see who was trying to hack into our system. We could automatically have Reactor hack them back. It's probably not a good idea nor legal, but we might, that's something we could show people probably how to do. We're building the end push technology that I talked about earlier into Reactor. So with Reactor, you'll automatically be able to deploy software to machines on your network. So if you have a change management or provisioning system that is used to deploy new machines, you can interface that with Reactor through some simple to use APIs, and Reactor can deploy software for you very easily. That's one way you could use it. We also have actions built into Nagios Reactor currently that allow you to spin up new virtual machines on Amazon's EC2 infrastructure. And we'll be adding additional support for SliceHost, Linode, and other popular services you guys might be using. And it's really easy, fairly easy to add your own actions in Reactor. So just some examples of things you can do. As I said, we'll have something out by the end of the year or the early part of next year for you guys to test on that. We would have liked to have had it ready for this conference, but too many things were going on. I want to wrap up by just mentioning why people often choose Nagios. There are a lot of people that that like Nagios that use it. We are not the only solution in the IT monitoring or IT management space. There are a lot of competitors on there, out there. It's a pretty big space with a lot of vendors in there. But a lot of people choose Nagios, and there are a couple of reasons why. One is we've got a lot of people worldwide that use our solution. We think, from what we can tell, there are over 1 million people worldwide that use Nagios solutions, and that makes it easy to find support for Nagios, not only from our company, but from the community as a whole. There's a lot of knowledge out there. And then also, Nagios is designed, not only Core or XI, but all of our products, we design them so that they can be customized by you. So they're flexible. You can extend them to make them work very easily in your environment. And that's important to us to make sure that not only our products integrate with each other, but they're easy to extend. We've talked to too many people that have used other systems that can't be extended, can't be customized. Systems that cost $1 million a year, but you can't create your own custom check. Seems to me to be ridiculous. For those of you familiar with Nagios, there are thousands of free add-ons for Nagios that extend its capabilities. And that's a huge resource that isn't available to a lot of other solutions. So it's something that we really think makes us stand apart. So with that, I'll end and just I'll turn the stage over to Paul in just a second. But I'd like to thank you all again for coming. It's certainly a pleasure to have you all here. And we certainly look forward to more talks with individuals. There are a lot of people here with a lot of great stories, sharing not only how they use Nagios, but the relationships and the friendships that they've formed in past conferences. So take the opportunity while you're here to meet somebody new and see what they do, see how they're leveraging Nagios or how they're solving a problem in their organization. Because that's really the most important thing here. I think even more than the individual presentations, the technical sessions that you'll attend will be the discussions that you all have with each other. And that's the best part. We really love it, and we certainly hope you guys enjoy the conference. So thank you for coming again, and I'm going to turn the mic over to Paul, who has some announcements about the general conference.
Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen.